we're gonna go to this next one, and let me see. I'm gonna see if the one after it happens to be another one where it's just um. All right, I know what to do. Here we go. All right, so this isn't like video, but I would appreciate what I would see, to say the least. I know I need to research more Casper, some of these other ones you guys are talking about. Yeah, Tim Shea did point out how ALBT was doing really well. Um, Also, of course, Clearpool is doing well. Obviously, not the same type of thing. One's DeFi and one is, like some of the ISOs and so on. But I do see where Menelik mentioned Casper and whatnot. I mean, I get it. There's a lot more than what you see on the thumbnail. But my thing is, being a content creator, especially for crypto, I would never BS you guys. People see through that immediately. Hence what we've been seeing, as of lately with some other guys who are taking some heat. Not going to get into that talk right now, if you will. Anyway, all right. So here we go, and check this out. So, I actually saw earlier on the news this whole thing with Credit Suisse. It says basically solving the problems of cross-border payments. You're always going to hear the term of cross-border payments like gangbusters, if you will, or overused, or whatever you want to call it, and rightfully so, because it's not just quant. Sometimes people hear about quant and it's always cross-border payments. Well, XRP is technically cross-border payments, and some of these other ones, and there's nothing wrong with the term being overused. It's just it's more than just solving this. But for the case of what you see right here on the screen, we're going to talk about this right here specifically. I wanted to bring it to your attention because, again, it's a little bit more of like this part 2 series, if you will, when it comes to preparing for November with ISO 222s. So Credit Suisse Group is the latest global bank to agree that cross-border payments are ready for distributed financial tech. In a new 135-page report, my God, something a little bit bigger than my master's thesis, right? Credit Suisse offers their research and expertise on blockchain, declaring that it will fundamentally change every aspect of banking and finance in the next 10 years. Furthermore, the report comes to the same conclusion as Ripple on the question of where these shifts will occur first and have the most significant impact. Again, cross-border payments. Now we get the whole idea about what they can offer for Web3 with some of these other ones, especially like Quant and so on. But for the purposes of this particular piece on Credit Suisse, we're going to focus on what you see right here. Now it says, quote, a shared ledger system creates significant opportunity for cost cutting in a number of areas where current processes are slow, hence SWIFT, right? Cumbersome and highly frictional. These areas include the processing of trades and securities, trade, finance, and also in payments, particularly cross-border payments/transactions. Credit Suisse cites Ripple as an example tech for banks to cut costs and increase revenues in payments. It says basically to tweet this, kind of like what we saw earlier with the whole, I don't know if it was Fox Business or CNBC Business or whatever it was, but it was a nice piece. Key takeaway, just try to remember this, and that is cutting down on bank costs, because the current system, if you're transferring trillions of dollars, like Tim Shea mentioned, I think it was Tim Shea, mentioned in the comments, what was it, something like $60 billion for something that big? That's just too much, and they just don't do it too often because it's just the fees, right? Well, it says using Ripple as an example of a platform that could enable not only cost cutting, but also increase revenues. Credit Suisse cited McKinsey, affirming cross-border payments as one of the most potentially valuable applications of distributed ledger technology. And it's just that, think about all this. When it comes to the central banks of Europe, Asia Pacific regions and whatnot, they all want to get off the old system to upgrade to the new system. And it's just that these 3 key words, especially if you're new to all this, distributed ledger technology, getting on a distributed ledger. So a McKinsey SIFMA study suggests that using blockchain for cross-border business to business payments, listen to this, could generate 50 billion of value resulting from lower costs slash fees and better security and speed. Literally, we were just talking about that earlier. Although McKinsey's prediction and the Credit Suisse report overall and make a conservative estimate of how soon this technology could deploy and banks begin to reap the benefits of innovation, the latter points out that Santander UK is already using Ripple, that's awesome, for international payments. Widespread adoption may not be on every bank's doorstep, but it has surely started. And it definitely is going to start here in November, right? We literally have, like I mentioned, something like a little over 70 different countries. If it's not 70, it's at least 30, and then more coming shortly after that. I don't want to misquote myself. But anyway, even if it was only 30, that's still a lot. The report goes on to describe the use of Ripple technology for trade finance, pointing out that the development of Bank of Singapore, DBS, and Standard Chartered tested Ripple's distributed ledger excuse me, technology in 2015 to improve immutability, and minimize the risk of fraudulent invoicing. With this report, Credit Suisse adds its voice to a rising chorus of experts who agree on the change the world is already beginning to see in the creation of the Internet of Value. I just want to take a moment before we read this last 3 bullet points, and that is this. The whole thing of the experts who agree the change that the world is already beginning to see and creation of the Internet of Value. Well, that value, just from one, you might call it a narrow perspective. It's not narrow. It's monumentally, like, just massive, right? But if banks are now able to see that they have a problem on their hands that they, let's face it, don't like, it's kind of like a damned if you do, damned if you don't. It's like, well, there's this technology here, but we aren't quite used to it, but it makes sense. How do we tackle this on? Well, let's get full into this. And it's not just necessarily them winging it. They are recognizing the technology that's in front of them, but how do they respond to that, right? When it comes to, like, this quote unquote word Internet of Value, I think it's just that, recognizing that the old system literally can cost, $60 billion to do some of these transfers. I think that's another reason why with the old system, not many of these countries just want to jump on board to, let's go ahead and borrow this money. I mean, it's so much of a inconvenience for one, and how long it takes, and not only that, the security flaws that are involved in it. If you can give a hacker group an entire day to possibly hack into a transaction, right? Even if it was only an hour, that's more than enough time for them to, take a portion of that and send it to some anonymous group. No, I'm not talking about the anonymous hacker group, but some random anonymous group that I don't know, maybe can't be technically tracked or whatever. I mean, if you can't see the security flaws in that, then I don't even know what to tell you. Of course, you can read the full report here. There's the last 3 bullet points, which it mentions cooperation between banks and fintech enables best results. Cross-border payments are the best possible use case, of course, for distributed ledger technology. That, in my opinion, is the standout reason why ISOs are going to pump like crazy. Again, we're talking about preparing for November. That should be your key takeaway. I mean, if $5 trillion is going to be passed within a matter of seconds compared to the old way of like an hour or more, if you can't see the value of the old saying of time is money, then again, I don't even know what to tell you. And the last part, as a provider of that technology, Ripple is an unparalleled leader. That in itself, what I mean? All of these financial systems of all these central banks, we didn't even get into Target 2 yet. We will later. But that said, I mean, it's going to be unbelievably massive for Ripple. And I'm glad that we're covering a lot of this now before we get into the real bull run. Because if anything, like Larry was mentioned, this is how we blow up as I guess you could say content creators, and also just being a crypto news network for you all. Of course, we have dreams. That's what we want. And we want to see our community do well on top of that. But even if we weren't covering this and we're just a group of people just looking into all the research, I think you can see where this is going when it comes to the whole topic of ISO 222. So that is it for now. I'm gonna kick it back to Larry just for a moment. Well, you just have you keep up with the comments and so on, and then we're gonna show you a couple other news pieces in regards to Ripple's XRP. So I'm gonna give it back to you, Larry.